Okay, hello, good afternoon. Thanks a lot for being here. We know we are in a time where there are a lot of interesting panels at the same time, so we are really glad you are here. Anyhow, it's going to be recorded, and some of them are live streamed, so we are very happy to have you at the audience. So my name is Gabriela Manuli. I'm the Deputy Director of the Global Investigative Journalism Network. I'm originally from Argentina, but I live in Budapest, Hungary. And I will be your moderator today for this workshop, which is called "What Makes an Award-Winning Investigation." So I hope you are all at the correct location. It's going to be a really interesting panel because we will share experiences from different sides of the desk. So people who are reviewing investigations and people who are also submitting. I'm also myself have some experience there, so let me read a little bit. So what we are going to focus now is especially on how do you win a prestigious journalism award like the European Press Prize or the IJ4EU Impact Award. We all know that it starts with a great story, but you also need to make an application shine, and that's an art, and that needs a lot of learning, and it can always be improved. So we are going to take a tour. We are going to have a mix of like very, very focused tips and tools, and also some examples, and we will give you plenty of time at the end for you to ask your questions, so don't worry about that. So let me introduce a little bit the speakers, and also the idea is that after this session you will be ready to prepare your submissions both for the European Press Prize 2025 and the IJ4EU Impact Award, which are having upcoming deadlines, the European Press Prize in October 2024 and the IJ4EU in February 2025. So we will start from here. We have Christian Lupsa. He's a storyteller, editor, and founder, and for 13 years he ran DOR, a digital and print magazine that was an important landmark for Romanian independent journalism until it closed in 2022. He's coming because he's also currently the chair of the European Press Prize Preparatory Committee, so he has experience reading like millions of applications and will tell you everything about that. Of course, they can tell you a little bit more about themselves, but I want to give you a brief overview. Then we have here in the middle Frederick Obermeyer. He's a Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative journalist and best-selling book author living in Munich in Germany. He co-founded Paper Trail Media, and his work focused largely on tax havens, corruption, extremism, and intelligence services worldwide. And he's been like a winner of different of these awards, finalists, etc. So he has a lot of experience from that side of the desk. And the third person we have here, the wonderful Lucila Rodriguez Alarcón. She's one of the 4 founders of the Por Causa Foundation in Spain and became its executive director in October 2016. And she's been working in the last 20 years in the creation and promotion of journalist networks and projects in many different ways. And she also has a lot of experience as a reviewer, but also as an applicant. So she can talk for both sides. So the idea is that we will have each of them, they will have a brief presentation focus on really tips and tools and what can you learn to make your application better. And then we will have a little discussion among us, and then we will prepare for all your questions. So what do you think, Christian? Are you ready?
Sure.
Give us all the knowledge.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Gabriela. What I'll say before I start is, after surviving media entrepreneurship, one thing that's not mentioned there, the newsroom I used to run in Romania won 2 European Press Prizes, which is crazy. Now that I'm part of the European Press Prize, I can tell you that. So that partly will shape the things that I will tell you right now. So what I thought I would do is just pick out 5 tips that might help you when you submit something for the European Press Prize. Another thing I want to say, that title sounds incredibly fancy. What this means is I get to bring together over 20 journalists from across Europe that read together they read all of the submissions in one form or another, and there were over 700 this past year. We don't pick the winners, which I know I'm relieved, and I think Lucia is relieved as well. There's a separate jury that picks the winners. We just pick the finalists, which is why it's fun.
Yeah, and I forgot the little detail that I'm part of the jury of the IJ4EU this year, so yeah.
There you go. So what I want to share with you before I get into the pointers, I want to share a bit about the range of the European Press Prize, and you can see the winners on the website, but I want to share three finalists with you that I think speak to things that are special about this prize, and then we'll hear about others as we move along. So this is a story that was shortlisted for the Investigative Reporting Award, and I picked this. This is a story out of Hungary, where the reporter looked into hospital infections. And this is, we talk a lot at this conference too about the cross-border collaborative investigations. This was not one of those. So this is a country-focused project to fill a gap in the public knowledge about hospital infections. And it was amazingly done. It was like a personal obsession, I think, for this reporter. Built a database that didn't exist before in how bad hospital infections are in Hungary. This is another story that I love. This was shortlisted for the Distinguished Reporting Award last year. And especially for those of you that come from Central and Eastern Europe especially, you might know that sometimes we send our loved ones stuff through sometimes even random people. So someone might take food on a bus to your loved ones in a different city. So this is a story about how stuff travels. In this case, it's mostly through Bosnia, Serbia, but it's how we send stuff to each other. And it's just a beautiful piece of writing about how people connect. And this is shortlisted for the European Press Prize. And the last one, this was shortlisted for the Public Discourse Award. This is a meditation on our relationship to nature, the environment, animals. So I just wanted to give you the range of everything. We have, yes, the Investigative Award. We have the Innovation Award, where a lot of other investigative stories appear. But this is a really broad award, and it's part of the reason I like it so much. So here's 5 tips if you're thinking about the European Press Prize. And number 1 is read the rules before you apply. And I mean it, because some rules don't make sense sometimes to us, the jury. Like by trade, I'm an editor. I edit long-form stories, narrative stories. The European Press Prize has a 5,000-word limit. I did stories that were 10,000, 12,000 words. Here, the risk is you send us an 8,000-word piece that you didn't cut. It might be thrown out before it gets read. So it's not saying your story. You can cut whatever you feel can be cut from it and tell us it was 8,000 words, but you cut it at 5 because of the rules. But look at the rules before you apply, because it would be a shame for your project not to be considered because you did not meet the rules. Like sometimes it might get administratively thrown out before it reaches us who reads it. Sometimes projects did make it past the administrative phase and we were like, oh, this story is 7,000 words. I'm sorry, we can't read it. So that's one particular rule, but there's many others, and there's specific rules to all the prizes. Read those, they actually do matter. Don't oversell, and I'm speaking here mostly as a Romanian journalist. Like, we thought, like, oh, I'm going to be competing with The Guardian and Die Zeit and Le Monde. Like, I really need to oversell my story. At least for the European Press Prize, don't. Just be clear and direct why the story was done, why you did it, how you did it, what the impact was. You don't need to convince us it plays in the same league as those papers or those outlets that have humongous resources. And this goes hand in hand. Don't panic if you're a small outlet. The fact that we're a diverse group of over 20 people from all corners of Europe, from newsrooms large and small, means a small player will get a chance. This is not a secret, but part of what we do is we look at someone who has done a story by themselves in a small newsroom in, I don't know, Serbia, Slovenia, Romania, Hungary. And then we look at Die Zeit, who's put 25 people on a story, and sometimes we say, well, the effort that this person who's alone might have taken is really impressive. And if they were 25, it would have been even more impressive. So don't panic if you did something small. If you're proud of the work, if you feel the work fits the categories and matches the rules, please send it in. That being said, context matters. So I think one of the harder problems judging stories is you don't know what happens in every country. You don't know why a certain investigation was really important in your country, or as Lucia might tell you, as an expert in reading migration stories, she's read every one of them. So if it's the first time that a migration story has made big waves in your country, we need to know, because then we'll read it with a different eye. So when you submit, especially for a prize that's outside your own country, explain the context in which that story came out. Explain why it was important in your context, why you feel it's innovative in your context. We have an innovation award, and our colleagues on the jury who are from the Netherlands and Denmark, I'm sorry, but they've seen probably all the technical innovations that we could come up with. They have developers on staff, they have graphic designers, they do data. Sometimes a project comes out and they're like, yeah, we saw this in the Netherlands 5 years ago. Why is this innovative? This is where your application can come in and say, yeah, but this is the first time this has been done in Slovenia. So context matters. Put that context out there. It will help. It will help the work. This is the last one. The thing I like most about the prize is that, at least in our preparatory committee, we argue a lot in the best way. Like, we talk about stories, we talk about language, we talk about why something that's written for a Polish audience might be weird sometimes to someone who's in Norway. We discuss all that. So the more you can explain your choices in the application, why you chose to do the story the way you did, the more it will help everyone. And I think that's it from me, and I'm glad to answer any other questions when we get to Q&A. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris. So before we go, one quick follow-up question, so please don't leave the microphone. You talk about oversell, but in a way also you talk a little bit about underselling yourself. So if we are talking especially about, for example, impact, can you give us some example of how they are overselling, or like some concrete things that people can say, oh, I didn't realize that's overselling, without giving, of course, names or anything confidential? Maybe it's difficult, but, or you can explain a little bit more.
I don't know if this is an example of over or underselling, but at least me, and I think I'm not the only one, we're not that impressed when you list all your analytics statistics. Like, especially if I don't know your country, the fact that you tell me 100,000 people clicked on the story, I don't know what that means. Or if you tell me, I don't know how many shares it had. I think what's helpful, at least in that regard, is, can you measure any kind of real-life impact? I would rather you quoted an email from one of your readers, or something that happened in real world after you put something out, rather than the analytics. I'm not saying we don't read those, but I know we've had entries where there was a large bullet point list of, here are all the numbers the story did. Okay, and after the numbers, what happened? And I know sometimes you're worried that you can say, well, I can't make 5 million page views like a Guardian feature can. Well, you don't have to. That's not necessarily what we're looking at. So I hope that's helpful.
Thank you, that helps. So let's go to Lucila. Yeah, your time.
I don't have a presentation because I'm a Christian's follower. So he's my boss, and I'm due to him. He doesn't like it, but you may know that. Okay, I took some points to complete what Christian said. I've been member of the PrepCom before Christian was my boss. I had another boss, Dennis. And so I've been like for almost 4 years, 5 years. It's true that the European Press Prize is one of the spaces that you have to submit your work to because you are submitting your work to 20 people. How many people are we? 21. This is the director of the European Press Prize, Jennifer. She's my boss. She's the Christian's boss.
She's a real boss.
We have the pyramid of power here. So, this is one important thing that you're not submitting your work to get a prize. You're submitting your work to be read by lots of people, and things happen with that. And we are a bunch of journalists and people working in things. This year, there are people coming to the Congress of Migration Journalism in Merida who presented their work and didn't win or were not finalists. But I discovered their work there reading the pieces. And so that's the first point I want to raise. Second point, read, as Christian said, but read before you write. I mean, select your application. There are things that you cannot, it's not useful that you do, you present a work in a way that is not being, it won't be selected. So first read and then select what you're putting there. Very important thing, sometimes you present projects that are unfundable, or you present a project that is fundable to fund the project that is unfundable. Okay? It seems, it looks like a Rajoy, but I'm going to explain. Rajoy is a former president of Spain who used to speak like that. You couldn't understand what he was saying, but this is the point. The point is that sometimes you want to fund something that you are the only one that understands it. And it only has sense for you. Don't present that. Change the project so it can be understood by the jury. It can be understood by the open place where you are presenting it. And then you will found your investigation and you will do it the way you want. So this is another thing that for me has been useful. And I don't want, well, be smart with your capacities. This is another very important point. More money is more administrative work. So be careful, because sometimes more money is worse. Consortium, you choose your friends. You don't know the people you're working with, then don't do a lot of things with them, because if you have a problem, then the whole project can go wrong. And finally, I will say that understand the people you're talking to. If you are presenting a prize, you're talking to judges, juries, structure. So this is your audience. If you're presenting a project, you're talking to judges, to an outlet. So understand who you're talking to and adapt your language to them. I hope that is useful. I'm glad to answer to another question.
One follow-up question. I think one of the issues when I also have experience with the Global Shining Light Award that we do at GIJN, and I'm jury of different projects. And I think one of the most difficult parts of an application is when you need to talk about impact, because a lot of the things we can read the investigation or watch investigation and we can get things, but the impact basically is the applicant that needs to tell us the story and convince us. Can you tell us as a jury what do you search for when you are evaluating impact of the projects, or which kind of things you really pay attention to, or what's the best way? He said, for example, I think this is super useful. Don't give us just statistics and numbers without context, but what are the things that you search when you are reading about impact?
Well, I think a tip can be specific, for example, on migration. This year, we received, I don't know how many applications, but a lot. I read all of them. They were almost all the same. It was the same story, told in the very same way. So for me, impact is when you are able, for example, to change the narrative line of a subject in the case of migration. Or impact can be that your work leads to a change somehow, but probably this change will be together with this new line of narrative that you're able to apply. Impact in innovation is that you get impacted by what you're seeing, or even the innovation. This is very interesting about the award of innovation in the European Press Prize. Innovative is not something that is technically innovative. It can be innovative in the way you are retrieving the information or using this information. It's not about technical innovation. Impact for me is absolutely a subjective thing. Impact is also that, and we have here Barbara, one of the representatives of the special prize this year. It was like lots of people funded by you, by the way.
Me?
By the
IJ4EU.
Yeah. And they were like, how many? 10 people? 8. But 8? Yeah, but so there were 8 freelancers who didn't know each other and worked online and issued an investigation that was Europe-wide. That was, for me, that was impact. I didn't care about how many people it reached. It was like God, like 5 freelancers are working together. Wow.
Thank you. That's really useful. We will have more time for questions, so let's go to the last presentation. Frederick, who is going to talk from the side of the winner and finalist, and sometimes also not winner, right?
Yes, I'm rather speaking about the failures because I've written so many applications and failed so often. So that is my library of failures, and the book about success is a little small one. So I'm basically speaking as one who applied for many awards and is sitting on some juries. So that's why I'm in the position to tell you some of the secrets of juries, because the juries are basically your target when you apply. So there's a lot of secrets. We cannot reveal all of them, but some are that juries are lacking context. You mentioned it already. Juries think, and as a jury member, I sometimes think I know everything, but I don't know. So tell it to the jury. Take your time and really step back. If you have done an investigation, you're normally so deeply into the weeds, you're into all the details and you love the details, but step back and start from scratch. What is the story about? What makes it unique? What makes it different from other stories, different from other migration stories? And if it's an investigative award or category, emphasize what you revealed, what others tried to hide from the public, and what you and your team were able to reveal, because I think that is the genuine investigative impact. If we can reveal something that otherwise, without our reporting, would have stayed in secrecy. I would not hide, but be quite upfront if there was something about a topic already been published, and then explain why you still think that your investigation is worth being nominated or even honored with an award, because there's always one jury member who knows that there was other stories, that there is other migrants and migration stories, and if you try to hide it or sugarcoat it, that is not a good impression. Like, be upfront, tell the jury what some of them might already know, but others not, and explain why your investigation still matters. The fact, why does your investigation matter, that's also something about timing. I think emphasizing why your investigation was published at the perfect timing. I've published a lot of investigations where I think that they have been good, but they were published at the wrong time. So if you manage to publish them at the perfect time, emphasize it, why this was the perfect timing, and why the timing maybe has led to a little bit more impact than other stories, like the ones that I have published before at the wrong time. Impact. And impact, as I'm repeating you here, is not the clicks, is not the viewers, but it's the most important part of our entry. Describe it. I would go through is politicians, lawmakers, prosecutors picking up your investigation? Are there investigations that are launched due to your investigation? Is there laws that may have been changed? Is there other outlets, competing outlets, picking up your reporting, sometimes doing better follow-up on your stories? This is something I think you don't have to hide. If your competitors pick up your story, that is not something bad. That's good. And even if they find new nuggets that you have missed, it's still good, because it means your story mattered. That's why your competitors picked it up. The audience that it reached, I think it should not be like be the important part, but I think it should be at least mentioned if you reach a bigger part. And sometimes if you reach an audience that has not been reached before by a certain topic, because sometimes there is a topic that is, especially in the Netherlands, when it comes for technical topics we have learned now, they might know it. But if it was not known in Austria, in Slovenia, in Germany, tell it to the jury, because how should they know? There's not always a German, not always a Slovenian in the jury. This is basically the entry form from IJ4EU, and here we come to the part, again, like read it carefully. What is the impact here? It's any political reaction. It's institutional or structural changes. It's legal actions, and it's public reactions. I mean, if your investigation leads to mass demonstrations, tell it to the jury, because they may have missed it because they're not living in the city where the mass demonstrations took place. Tell it to them. And I think there's also sometimes investigations where it's harder to find the impact, and sometimes it feels like you have no impact at all. But if you really like search one, you find it. So that's why I took an example here of an investigation that my team did with several outlets in Europe, and that was about the mass internment of Uyghurs in China. And first glance, and first when we like debated the application for awards, we were like, well, there is no impact. The Chinese are still imprisoning Uyghurs. Our investigation did not change the situation, and it was not the first investigation. But still, digging deeper, we found some impact, because we found that the investigation was referenced to by expert reports by the UN Special Rapporteur, for example. It was in the small print. We really had to search for it. But if a UN rapporteur picks up your investigation and references to it in an official report, I think that's something you can be proud of, and that's also some form of impact. So that's my encouragement for like searching for different styles of impact. It's not always the most obvious ones, and sometimes it's like, also as you mentioned, the impact of victims reaching out to you because they feel hurt for the first time. And I think that's also a very important impact, and it's an impact that is hard to measure. But I think it means a lot for us as journalists if we shine light on something that was hidden before, and if somebody feels seen for the first time despite suffering for years. That is, I think, the impact that matters most for me personally.
Thank you. So before I ask you a question, I was taking notes. I think this is really important, what you talk about honesty. I think just be honest, and this thing, I think this is one of the most important hidden tips of today, or not hidden. Tell us what was reported before, make our job easier as jury, but also like explain, so then we can get the path. And I would add, you use your own storytelling techniques for also crafting the application. The application is not a form that you fill out in 5 minutes before the deadline, hopefully. Like, the form is also storytelling in itself, and you really need to work on that. So I wanted to ask that as a follow-up question. Can you tell us who in your team, how do you face the application, who in your team writes, and how do you consult each other? Or, I mean, if just the person who wrote, the main reporter, or you have a team, so guide us through that process. In the ideal world, I know that sometimes you are just scrambling for a deadline.
And sometimes it's like realizing 3 hours before a deadline runs out that there's something out there and we should apply. But in general, in our team, we always have like a lead coordinator for each project. That's basically the person that is coordinating all our reporters. Is sometimes a reporter him or herself on a certain topic, but is like running the show, is coordinating with partners. And it's his or her task also to draft the first application. And we have a fantastic office manager who is basically screening all the applications. It is normally 2 months before the deadline, putting it on our weekly agenda, asking the lead coordinator, do you really have time? If not, who can jump in? So that we ideally have like 4 weeks before the deadline runs out, a first draft. Then we would edit it, first edit, second edit, then share it with partners, because we normally do partner with others, let them edit, and then we file it. But we also try, and that's the ideal world now, in most cases we fail on that one, to give it to one of our team members who was not part of the investigation and who is simply like heard about the investigation in our normal conferences, read it as a normal reader, and not being like the one reader who was part of it, and asking the simple question, do you understand why we think that this investigation should be awarded? And if the answer is, normally it's not no, but sometimes it's like, then that's a signal for, that's the little red flag to go over it again and do some more edits.
I feel you give us the secret code to crack, because briefly, how many of these awards have you gotten? Not to brag, but to show that your technique is working. Apart from doing great investigation, because it's not just, it's not just, because if not, we would just work doing applications, right? But
I've won some, but I must say the ones where I'm the most proud of, that's are the ones where I did not file their application myself. So, and that tells you a little bit, but I was part for an IJ4EU team that was awarded an award for the Pegasus project, and the Xinjiang police files that were mentioned here won that award as well. So
great. So to honor the title of the session, which is a workshop, but of course we couldn't do much hands-on because of the setting, but to honor the workshop word of the title, we will have plenty of time for questions and answers. I ask you a few rules. Please briefly introduce yourself, name, country, and organization, and pose a concrete question, not like a long thoughts. We welcome long thoughts, but probably after the session, so then we have time for everybody to ask questions. So there should be a microphone going around, and it's hard to see. Or maybe you all don't have questions. It was so clear. So we have one there. Yeah, we need some time. And it's the last session of the day, so I guess people, or almost the last. There are a few things. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Kio Dörer. I'm a climate journalist and editor for DW, Germany's international broadcaster. I understand kind of the impact category for investigative stories, because the point is there's something hidden and then you reveal it. For non-investigative stories, which is a lot what I do a lot of explainer, reportages. What do you look at there? For the European Press Prize, I know there's also non-investigative categories.
So a lot of what we look at, so in the European Press Prize, we have a distinguished reporting category, which is the place for feature writing, long-form reportage, and those things. We have a public discourse category, that's opinion, commentary, and all those other forms. And those all have their own things we look at. So for the distinguished reporting, we look at how it's written, how it's paced, how it's structured. So we look at a lot of craft stuff. For public discourse, we do look at how the argument is made. Does it say something about the place or the issue that's been tackled? It would be hard for me to tell you that impact is 20% of whatever we judge. But I think, let's take the public discourse category. If you wrote a story We had one of the, I think the winner this year, and I think she's with us in the room, wrote about the how Slovenia treats its elderly. If we learned that that sort of got a flurry of people commenting about their own parents or the family situation, and that became a bit of a conversation, even if it was around the story, that's tremendous impact. And I would always look at impact and sort of, maybe it helps you in sort of like 3 tiers. You have the macro level that Federico was talking about, where maybe you change a law, and then you have the really micro level, maybe it's 5 people writing you an email. Then you have the more unclear middle level, where some people tried to do something but were not able to change it, an NGO picked it up. Look at all those levels. Don't shy away from saying, this just got a lot of people saying, this touched me, this reflects me. If that's the impact it got, just be honest about it, because sometimes we read something and that's the impact we feel. We're not just gonna go see what did this opinion piece change a law. Maybe that's not what it was meant to do.
You want to add something, Lucy?
I think, as they mentioned, you're talking to juries who are journalists or people related with news. So if it also changed your life, that's an impact. If it opens a line of work, that's an impact. So impact is also, for me, it's very important that there is a story besides the story. Not only about what you're talking about, but also for you, or the way the story are told. So as Christian was saying, and it's true, nothing is too small. And as she was saying, an application is a story that you're telling. So sometimes you have 2 months, normally you have 2 weeks.
Okay, so we have one question there and then one question at the back.
Hi, my name is Elisa Triantafylou. I'm working for Inside Story. It's a Greek investigative media outlet. I have one question. If you are reporting on an ongoing matter, like the spyware scandal in Greece, we didn't have a main story. We just reported and investigated as it went. So you cannot just pick out one of your stories, and you probably might be more logical to submit it as a series of articles. What is happening with that category? Because I mean, we had all 4 impact bullet points in our reporting, context-wise, and I mean, it was a local story with basically no cross-border collaboration, but basically a colleague of mine, Tassos Teloglou, and I reported on that, and we keep digging and keep finding and keep writing things. We investigated the whole story for 2 years. So what, I mean, would that be submitted as a project, or?
Are you asking about any of the specific awards, these 2, or about?
Basically Christian, I think.
To the European Press
and,
Prize. Okay.
Any ideas from Frederick would be welcome, or from all of you. I mean.
Okay.
So that's a great question, because one thing that is important to note is that all prizes have their kind of natural boundaries. Like the European Press Prize doesn't do audio or video, for example, so automatically there's limits. It also doesn't do projects per se, but here's what we did do, and we did this many times. We had many series that were being submitted, but I think the most successful ones, when it comes to how the jury talked about it, is when you picked out one episode or one particular story that you felt was relevant for the ongoing coverage or the series, and say, listen, we've been working on this topic for a year, or we have done 10 episodes on this. This is a relevant one. This is what the others were about. For example, the Border Graves investigation that won this year's special award was not submitted as a series. What they did is they submitted, I think, all of the stories individually, and the jury knows that. So I can tell you, and I don't think the press prize has any issue with me telling that our first reaction was suspicious. Like, okay, they submitted 7 stories, maybe one of them is good. But then we sort of read some of the stories and we're like, we can't award this individually. This might be a disservice to the individual journalist. Maybe there is one story among those stories that is better. It might be, that reads better. But we sort of grouped it and say we're awarding the series. And that has happened before. Someone submitted like an episode of a project. There was one on the Sami in Finland, the indigenous population there. But she pitched it as saying, this is the episode I'm like most out of these series. It's part of a package of 7. So that's how I would do it, because the risk with submitting a series is that you mess up the administrative criteria as it's written now. I'm not saying it's perfect. We're always trying to make it better. But don't mess up the rules. Just sort of spotlight one and say that it's part of something bigger, and I guarantee you we will read it as such. And be smart, include 7 other links. I've read a story about drugs in Denmark. Although they submitted 1, I read 3 other stories just because it was interesting. So that's how I would do it.
Frederick, any of your experience?
It's exactly what you recommended. I'm glad that you say that you want it that way, because I just was like, okay, that's how we did it in the past, but maybe you don't want it like that. But actually pick one and mention in the description that there's more. If there's a PDF, there's some awards where you send a PDF for your article. We sometimes like use the trick of like sending the PDF of the article, then have 1 or 2 blank pages, then write, this is part of a series, here's the rest. And I'm sure that some of the jury members were annoyed by it, but some may have read all of them, so it's a gamble.
Yeah, do you want to add, or should we continue? No. We had one question there at the back. Yeah.
Hi there, my name's Dylan Carter. I'm a freelance investigative journalist based in Brussels. One of the intricacies of investigations is that you are often holding powers to account. You're writing about a third party who can almost influence the outcome of your articles. One of the things they can influence is its outreach. I've certainly written stories where the organization in question has hired PR teams and used their legal might to crush the story, and you end up with a story that isn't read by very many people but meant a great deal to you. How do you, in the writing process, account for this and hold power to account while still making sure that your story is reaching as many people as possible and is having those tangible effects, even when there are people trying to work against you in that regard?
Yeah. Who wants to take over that question?
You see, it's a challenging question. I don't have a recipe for it, to be honest.
I'll give it a shot. I'll be completely honest here. Frederick is right. As someone who's applied for prizes, as someone who's seen journalists frustrated that they don't win awards, there is a truth to juries, that juries are in a way subjective, and that's awful, but it's also good. And one part of it that is good is that it sometimes doesn't matter if a story that you submitted didn't get read by anyone because it didn't have a huge machine behind it. Then you have a story that had a big organization or a big PR campaign behind it. And the reason that might not matter is exactly what Lucia said. You have 20, at least in our case, we have 20 new readers that are first and foremost obliged to read that story. So if I like your story, the story you did as a freelancer that barely got read, if you made the case that it was a story that mattered in that specific context, it might beat out a story that was done by someone who had a huge PR campaign around it, because these new readers, in their subjective way, when they came together, they said, well, this is a good story. The other one might be flashier in terms of what it says it did, but this is special in its own right. And I know this is not a satisfying answer, but this is why I wanted to put it out there. Because this subjectivity of the group conversation of a jury sometimes will say, yeah, but let's do it. And I think the European Press Prize has had a lot of freelancers that have won the prize. And it helps because 10,000 euros is welcome money when you're a freelancer. It's not a guarantee. I understand the frustration, but what I am saying is that you will have generous new eyes even on stories that were not pushed out by big organizations.
And I think there's one advantage that you always have, that juries get bored. I guess that the jury of the European Press Prize and IJ4EU reads a lot of the names again and again and again because they're applying every year. And if you are applying for the first time, your name is not known to the juries. For me, if I'm sitting in a jury, that's always the ones that I want to read first, because there is some players where I know that they're good and what they are like handing in to such awards. But if you read a new name, that's always like, hey, that's interesting. And I think also that's something that I try to like present to my team and encourage, especially younger reporters, is like, apply for awards. I think there's a generational issue, and that speaks for the younger generation, that they are not like that pushy when it comes to awards. I come from a generation where everyone was like, you write your first article for your student magazine and you apply for the European Press Prize, and it's like, there's a change, but I think it's also like, show yourself. If you think you have written a good article, trust your gut feeling. Apply for it, and even if you fail for the first 10 times, maybe the 11th time you win. And even if you do not win, in those juries, there are normally sitting people, like they're sitting here, that are influential in the media business, that will remember your name, and maybe you do not win an award, but maybe you win the next job when they have a job opening. So go for it.
I would like to add that there are prizes for choose the prize. So it's not the same to apply for the European Press Prize, who has a characteristic, and if you're a freelance, you're going to be better treated than if you come from a big media outlet. It's like that, we have to say it. We like freelances. Why? Because we're a small prize that is very big for freelance, and we believe on free journalism, but it's not the Pulitzer. Maybe for winning the Pulitzer, you need a campaign, or you need people helping you with your application. So try to find the right prices and the right places for putting your application. That's key.
Yeah, I think it's really important what you're saying. Made me laugh, like our generation, we all want to be award-winning journalists to have on our LinkedIn, right? But also it made me think, maybe very briefly, if you can say, I think we've been talking about it, but you know, why do we want to win awards? Yeah, it's nice, like we want the, but there are a lot of reasons, and also I think it's important that sometimes you didn't win, but you are a finalist and you got a job, or you got visibility. So very briefly, each of you, and then we can go to questions. Why do we need to win awards? What's your main motivation?
For me, it's simple. When I used to run a magazine in Romania, it was very different from much of the journalism that was being done. So the award was more a way, especially when we got it. But the idea was, if we can win an award, especially an international one, there's a team of 15 to 20 people that don't feel crazy anymore because the rest of the media ecosystem didn't really understand what we were doing. An international award told everyone, it's fine. You're okay. You're in good company. So for me, that's what mattered the most.
Yeah.
I think for me, it's that we are living or working in an environment that is not always having the best working conditions. We work, especially on investigations. We all know the final stretch is hell. You sleep a lot. Well, that would be cool. You don't sleep that much. You fight with your family. You have to juggle between like the final edit, the fact checking, the lawyering, and the normal family chaos with your children at home. And I think that's stressful. That's why there's so much burnout in this whole like business. And I think those awards are something that are giving back something for a team. It's a recognition, especially for younger ones who are fresh into in a like team investigation, for example, it means a lot. It means like what you have done. There's somebody who is seeing that you have worked for 2 weeks, day and night. There's somebody who is like recognizing the extra mile that you went, and there's somebody like seeing that you reached something with your investigation, that you made a difference. And I think that's also, I think, a little bit egoistic, but I think if it doesn't keep us going, that would stop all of us. I think we need that motivation to uncover more and to, yeah, let's be pathetic, change the world a little bit for the better.
Yeah, and I think it's really important what you say, your role also as a mentor. Maybe the journalists that are just starting, they don't know about this award, so it's up to you, editor or boss, to go and encourage them. Very briefly, if you want, and we go to questions.
We only have 51 minutes. You're very 51
no,
seconds.
we can stay a few more minutes. That's not
okay.
Yeah.
Well, I agree with you both. I also, that is very important, the awards put you in a system that it's full of new friends, new capacities. If you are part of the European Press Prize, then I'm seeing people I met in Prague, and it's people that share with me things. We help each other, we create consortiums. So like prizes are not only just the fact of the prize, but also the network you part with. And I really encourage everybody to try and to be part of that. On the top of what you said, to feel that you're not crazy and that your work is worthy, and that helps.
Really, thank you for opening up. There is a question here, and while we reach the microphone, I think another thing that they mentioned, and especially being a jury, that stop thinking of a jury as a unified front, that they all think the same. Like, if you hear the discussions they are inside the jury, like the heated discussions, sometimes like you really need to stop, because it's like, this is the best, and someone said, no, that's the worst. And like, so it's, at the end of the day, it's highly subjective, and in a lot of cases it's more reaching towards a consensus. So maybe your top winner per se is not winning, but your second choice is winning, and you as a jury are still very happy, and you think that investigation deserves. So we have more questions there.
Yeah, hi, my name is Florence Wild. I work for Correctiv, an investigative newsroom based in Germany. And my question is maybe a little bit more philosophical. I would like to hone in on the European part of the European Press Prize. So you mentioned it could be a highly local story, or a story with regional relevance that can be very specific, and you need the context. But how do you evaluate the Europeanness of a story, because you're elevating it to a European audience that the story itself might have not reached? So how do you evaluate that, and has that changed over time? Like, is there kind of a didactic mission, like this is a relevant European story, even though maybe it's only focusing on Slovakia or another context?
Wow, that is a great question, and I think I'll only go as far as my as my particular understanding of it goes. I think Jennifer, or the prize here, might tell you more about that. In our discussions in the 3-4 years I've been part of it, the way we understand it is not the Europeanness of the story, is the European context in which the story, we're not judging the Europeanness of a story. If it's in Europe, or if it's a writer from the continent, or if it's an outlet from here, that's what we're looking at. It's a great point you're making. I would think it would be a stretch if I told you that is something we are judging. Maybe it's something we should be asking, but that's not a question
but
that
I
we
think,
have been.
But I think we have these discussions, because
we do talk about the relevance of a story to more people, but I don't think we've evaluated, or at least like the Europeanness of it. I don't think I've ever thought about that in those philosophical terms.
I don't know. I think that sometimes you're shocked because it's a story that is about a country, and you didn't know that was happening in this country, but it's happening in other countries in a different way. I think the fact that we are all European, and the jury is European, and we have different perspectives, gives the European scope to our debate, and to the stories. I don't want to be, I mean, you're my boss, and of course you're right, and I might be
not
wrong.
your boss.
No, I'm just, this is the kind of discussions we
See,
sometimes
we
have.
are
how it
never
looks
a
like.
unified front. There are always different perspectives.
Yes, but I think the European Press Prize is European. We are like representing different countries. Sometimes we're very shocked about things that are relevant for a country and are not relevant at all for other countries. Mediterranean is like a big part. Then you have Eastern countries. And at the end, I think this is the value, this is what makes us European. But it's a feeling, as Christian said, we don't have a manual about that. But I really have the feeling that is, because we had stories from Latin America and things like that, written by European journalists. And it also goes through, I don't know, yes, I'm confused.
Yeah, I think you posed the most difficult question for the end. I think we can keep discussing over. I mean, it's so interesting. We can keep discussing over coffee at the breaks. I think it's so. I think we have 1 or 2 minutes, very brief questions. If someone has something very pressing, we are happy to answer. And if not, I think I really want to thank you for being so honest and candid and sharing your experiences. If talking about impact, if just one of you in this audience crafts a better application and gets to be a finalist or something like that, I think our impact is done for this session, and I really believe so. I hope you all learned some new tricks and see you around the conference. Thank you very much for.
And our entries open on October 1st. So
Oh yeah,
you'll
let's start
have,
the marketing.
you'll have more than 2 months to prepare your application, but you can start checking it out on Tuesday, I think.
Yeah, and if I'm correct, the IJ4EU Impact Award is February 2025. Okay, I'm correct. Okay. Not the award. I don't know if maybe someone from IJ4EU say what's open now, because they were asking, and I'm just a humble jury, so Dennis, if you can tell them.
Well, we have currently our next round of applications for grants open. I think it will go on for another 7 weeks or so. October 28 is the deadline, so if you have cross-border projects in Europe, please check our website, investigative-journalism-for-Europe.eu, right? Or something like that.
And
I am horrible with this.
And tonight we had the ceremony where we will show the IJ4EU Impact Award winners, right?
Yes, so it's in an hour. And for the next year's award, you should expect a call for applications by the end of the year. And then it will run for 8 weeks. So approximately around end of February will be the deadline. So we are waiting for them.
Anything else added for the European Press Prize? I feel like a marketing agency. Okay, please apply. We want to see all your work. Thank you very much. Thank you to the speaker.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.